everybody, my name's Erica and welcome to my channel, Ginger Books, or welcome back if you're a continuing viewer or subscriber. So today, as you can tell by the title, we are doing a wrap-up. However, I'm changing the way I kind of do wrap-ups on this channel just because I don't read enough to do a wrap-up every month. So we're just going to do them seasonally or quarterly. So every 3 months or every season, at the end of every season, I am going to kind of showcase either books that I really enjoyed that I want to recommend to you guys, or a series that I really enjoyed and read throughout the season. So for the fall quarterly wrap-up, I have a series in mind that it took me a while to finish, but I absolutely loved it and, to be honest, did not want to finish it. So without further ado, let's get into the video. So the series that I'm talking about is Sarah J. Maas's A Court of Thorns and Roses. And in that series, it is A Court of Thorns and Roses, the second book, A Court of Mist and Fury, the third book, A Court of Wings and Ruin, and the spin-off novel, A Court of Frost and Starlight. The last one is kind of like a novella around Christmas time. It's almost like a year later of the original storyline. But I wanted to share this series with you because I have been meaning to get into kind of like fairy high fantasy type novels and or fiction series, and I absolutely fell in love with this series. So to start off with, I'm going to kind of talk about each book one by one and just like my thoughts of what I liked and what I disliked. So I will put, when we get to the other books in like the trilogy / series, I will put a timestamp of kind of like, you may not want to watch this. It's going to be spoiler because it's going to kind of sum up of what happened in the last book and what kind of happens in the second book. So I will put a timestamp where to skip to. Hopefully there won't be too much spoilers. If not, I would suggest clicking off of this video and just reading the whole trilogy / series and then coming back and watching this video. So to start off with, we're going to start with book 1, which is A Court of Thorns and Roses, and what introduces you to the series. So you follow Feyre, and I'm going to probably pronounce her last name wrong, I do apologize, Acheron, who is, her family fell on hard times. She lives with her father and her 2 other sisters, believe she's the youngest, so it's her 2 older sisters. This small little village just outside of the wall of, on Prythian, of the that walls off the fairy lands to the human realm. A small village after her father fell through on a shipment because he was a merchant, and pretty much lost their estate, lost all of their lands, and they're living in a rundown shack, where Feyre has taken it upon herself to pretty much take care of her family since her father is crippled and can't, and she feels like has lost the will to provide for her family. So she goes out and hunts one winter day, and she ends up killing a wolf when she kind of realizes that wolf was an actual fairy. Meaning that since she has now killed a fairy, that whoever court he or she belongs to, that lord is going to be coming after her because it's either punishable by death or you have to pretty much be enslaved to that lord. I'm not 100% sure. I think it was punishable by death. So she pretty much braces herself and her family, and the lord of the Spring Court, by the name of Tamlin, shows up in his kind of like beast type wolf form, and pretty much tells her that she now needs to come live with him to atone for the payment of killing pretty much his right-hand man, one of his right-hand men and friend. So she is pretty much whisked away to Prythian, and to the Spring Court, where she lives with Tamlin. And that is where pretty much your story begins, of her learning that maybe the fairies are not as bad, and also of the 50-year curse that has been put on the whole the fairy lands of Prythian. And it's just a very exciting series from the get-go. A lot of action. I mean, it was a huge, like, I absolutely loved the kind of hate to love, like hate to friends to love story between Tamlin and Feyre. However, that will change later on when I talk about the second book. But that's what really enticed me, is the love, friendship, hate to love relationship between Tamlin and Feyre. I loved the story building that Sarah J. Maas does. I love some of the crude, kind of dark humor that Sarah J. Maas also weaves into the story. I thought that was quite unique, and I just loved it overall. The con is you start kind of seeing, and you don't really start kind of seeing the problems with the relationship between Tamlin and Feyre until the second book, but after reading the second book, you start to kind of see, oh, you're right. But through the whole book, it's just been a huge suspense, a lot of plot twists and just twists and turns in the plot until you get to the end of the huge big battle scene and fight scene and what happens to Feyre, which is very gut-wrenching because something happens to her that she never thought would happen to her, especially growing up knowing that, fairies are bad. You don't want to be part of their race. They're very stuck up, and just not having a very good history between the fairies and the humans, which you learn more throughout the series. So on to the second book in the series, which is A Court of Mist and Fury. At the end of the first book, there is a huge battle scene between the person, I'm probably going to pronounce it wrong, Armamith, who is a queen that came from Hyperbian lands of a king who absolutely disdains and was a loyalist to keeping humans as slaves. That you find out a little bit more of the history between the humans and the fairies, what happened before the huge war broke out, and the fairies and the humans kind of won, but resurrected a wall. So that queen pretty much, it's bestowed pretty much a curse on the Spring Court, not the other courts, but raised pretty much holy hell throughout the whole land of Prythian on the fairies' side of the wall. And she had imprisoned a gentleman by the name of Rhysand, who was in charge of, which is the High Lord of the Court of Night, or the Court of Nightmares, which we find out a little bit more about him. But Feyre pretty much ends up setting everybody free, but then ends up dying at the end. Through a ritual that not a lot of the lords of the different, High Lords of the different courts know, gave a piece of her power to resurrect her as an immortal fairy. So now she is with Tamlin, her betrothed. She absolutely hates Rhysand's guts, even though, to be honest, he's the one that pretty much helped keep her sanity while she was trapped underneath the mountain. And she is supposed to be pretty much marrying Tamlin. However, at the beginning of the book, she starts to have very bad PTSD, fears and doubts of marrying Tamlin, and just feels like this is totally wrong. She hates being she feels like she's trapped in the Spring Court. She can't really go anywhere because of Tamlin's huge PTSD and fear of something happening to her, and just ruling everything, just building up to the point of their wedding where she's literally, Feyre's having a panic attack. And that's when Rhysand, through the bond of an eye on them, that she promised that she was supposed to spend a week each month with him, finally comes and gets her after 3 months. And that's where their kind of love story begins. You see them pretty much kind of, again, the hate to love story, and finding out the reason why even though she hates him at first, she feels this attraction towards him. And it's wonderful. You start finding out the secrets of the Court of Night, or the Court of Nightmares, and how Rhysand has spun this huge lie to protect the true court. They call it the Court of Dreams, but the true Court of Night. And it's just a wonderful, wonderful series all around, or a wonderful book all around. I absolutely enjoyed it. I loved Feyre and Rhysand's, even at the beginning when they didn't like each other, I loved the banter. Love, again, the dark humor and the crude humor that they throw in there. I will have to warn you, this is definitely an adult series. Parents who do not agree with their children reading smut, there is a lot of face smut in here. So just a little bit of a warning, especially in A Court of Mist and Fury, especially when Rhysand and Feyre stop fighting each other and end up together. But it's really nice to see the spin of the novel, and you also get more introduced to the King of Hyperbian, Hybern, who is very cutthroat and ruthless, and definitely is out for revenge. Also, a couple of things happen in here that are a huge plot twist and kind of cause Feyre's character to grow a lot more. Now on to, technically this is a trilogy, so on to the last book of the series, which is A Court of Wings and Ruin. Feyre ends up being pretty much taken back to Tamlin after having a showdown with the King of Hyperen, and finding out that he has now the cauldron that made, pretty much supposedly of legend, made the whole fairy race. So that's bad. Also finding out that Feyre's two sisters are now, after trying to help them, were captured and are now immortal. But they are now with Rhysand back in the Court of Dreams, Court of Night territory. And pretty much now she is back with Tamlin, but however, she is being very sneaky and trying to tear the Court of Spring from the inside out, pretty much bent on revenge, which in a way kind of doesn't help later on the whole connection of trying to take down the King of Hyperion and the fight that in the huge war that pretty much installs that happens in the middle of this book and towards the end of it. But pretty much tears the whole court from the inside out. You also find out that Rhysand and Feyre are mates. So that's bad. Which is another kind of knife twisted into Tamlin. Makes him hate Rhysand even more. And tries to keep Feyre again in kind of a locked cage. And it's just a lot of drama, suspense, a big, huge plot twists in this book to kind of finish off the huge timeline that you're in. And it's just all around just chef's kiss. Sarah J. Maas is probably going to be one of my top favorite authors of all time. This is just an enjoyable series that I've read. And just A Court of Wings and Ruin. It just gut-wrenches your heart so much. Just a lot of trauma that these characters are going through, but it's just so happy to see in the end it all works out in some ways. So that brings me to pretty much kind of like the sequel to the trilogy and kind of like a novella companion, which is A Court of Frost and Starlight, which is pretty much about a year later as they're trying to rebuild after the huge war. The wall is now down. There's no wall separating, and they want to bridge a connection better than they tried to with the humans after the last big battle. That didn't really end very well, to be honest, at the end, even though each territories gained their freedom. Now they actually want to bridge a connection, and right now they're trying to kind of move on and just enjoy the winter solstice that is coming up and planning for it. And Feyre is trying to figure out how she can use her paintings and trying to express her ways to get her kind of like, I want to say, trauma out there in the open and trying to cope with it. And it's just wonderful seeing Feyre and Rhysand finally enjoying themselves in their company. It's just wonderful. Also having different, the other side characters' point of views, like her sisters, especially since one of her sisters right now is going through a very, very tough time. She has took up pretty much being a prostitute and drinking and gambling, and run because of all that happened in the last battle, so she's not coping it with very well. The other sister is coping as best as she can. She's thrown herself into gardening and baking and living with Feyre and Rhysand in their townhome. But it's just wonderful to finally see everybody being able to just, even though they're busy trying to rebuild what happened and trying to bridge connections to the courts again and with the human realm. So I just love this series so much. I try not to go into too many spoilers, so I do apologize if I did spoil a little bit. But you watched at your own risk, I guess. I did warn you. But I just love this series so much. It's definitely going to be a series that I want to reread already. I just can't get enough of Feyre and Rhysand. Oh, they're my favorite. And I would have to say, out of all the books I've read so far this year, this is probably going to be my favorite series of 2020. Just like last year, Stalking Jack the Ripper was my favorite series of 2019. Anyways, thank you so much for watching this wrap-up video. If you liked what you saw, please hit that subscribe button and that bell notification so you are notified when I post. I post every Tuesdays and Fridays. Tuesdays being the fun, bookish content like this, or my life, so bookish/life content. and Fridays being the fun Sims content that hopefully I will have a video out this Friday. I'm still in the process of editing and introducing the challenge that we're doing on Fridays now for Sims. So again, thank you so much. I hope you have a wonderful start to your week, and I will see you in the next video.